Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see you, most of you still here in ZINC 2021 and ECBS 2021 conference, day 2. We are running today from 8:30. We had 3 very interesting sessions that have just been finished, and we are almost on time for our next event. So this is the panel session with the title Securing Industry 4.0 Plus Trends and Caveats. It is going to be a very interesting discussion with a very interesting roster coming from mostly the industry, because we already disclosed that the ZINC conference is a blend between industry and academia. This is why we have the discussions that try to bring together these two worlds and provide the most relevant results to the audience. The moderator of this panel is Bojan Mrazovac, that is actually the affiliate of Entity Data. This is a company dealing with different things. It's a huge worldwide international company in information technologies mostly. Bojan is in charge for automotive R&D leadership in Entity, and he's going to assume the role of the host and the moderator of this panel. Bojan and your team, I wish you a very successful 1 hour of hot discussions. So I will now give the word to Bojan to address you and to introduce his colleagues, panelists. I think most of them are here. Bojan, please.
Thank you, Milan. Thank you very much for the great words. And I would like to regard you, as you said, in front of Entity Data, but also I would like to thank you for organizing this event. Also, although we have this pandemic this year and still it's, we can say, ongoing, and hopefully it will finish soon. But hopefully that today we will be able to answer some questions that are among the hottest topics nowadays. What actually Industry 4.0 is bringing to us, and how we are trying from the engineering and from academia perspective, how we are trying to answer to this. So I'm not sure, Ivan, if you can maybe just share the presentation, because, yeah, thank you. So we just prepared a few topics that we would like to present today. Okay, I would like to thank to all participants to this panel today. We have Professor Ezendu. I'm not sure if he's here today with us from the United Kingdom. I see Professor Dan from University of Cluj-Napoca. We have also Dr. Anand from Asquared from India, and we have Miguel from Everis. So with some of them, I'm personally in contact, so we'll try today to answer the best questions that we put in front of this audience. So can you please go to the next slide? And before we start, I'd just like to do an introduction. So next industrial revolution, so-called Industry 4.0, and some authors are already calling it 5.0. It has started its expansion towards basically the whole sector of industry and production. And the main goal is to achieve the full digitalization nowadays of processes, from warehouse management, production itself, to the logistics and the distribution towards the final consumers. Basically, Industry 4.0 brought a variety of new digital services, heavily utilizing big data and cloud computing, different techniques from predictive analytics, basically a very heavy leveraging machine learning and AI, and all those processes started to changing the ways how most of the companies and industries operate across the value chain. And as the first topic that we would like to discuss today is basically to check the facts. Where do we stand today? What are the current focus areas of digital services development, and how we, from academia industrial's perspective, are trying to answer to them? I would like to ask first Professor Dan to give his opinion.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for inviting us. We have to say from the beginning that we have a very strong collaboration with the company Entity Data from Cluj-Napoca. And since you are two in the same company, And we have to tell you that we applied for many Horizon projects together, also with entity data. And I see here another partner from Everis, from Spain, which are also our partner in other projects. So thank you so much from the beginning. I would wanted to say this. And regarding my feedback toward how we stand today, I would like to give you a perspective from our university or from academic point of view. What we notice is that the new digital technologies, let me say, are blurring the lines between the physical and digital spheres of global production systems. That means that right now we face some different levels of maturity or rapid expansion into some areas. Some of the areas like 3D printing, industrial robotics, cloud computing, Internet of Things are already to a mature level. Some other topics like they face a rapid expansion. For example, artificial intelligence, there is a lot of investment in these sectors. Collaborative robots, augmented reality, smart wearable devices. Also, for example, an early growth, I can tell you, virtual reality, drones, 5G in manufacturing, voice control devices are becoming now more and more cheaper. So actually everything relates now to adoption and maturity, because there are some technologies that have higher prices now, and the adoption rate for them is quite low. I'm speaking as well, for example, for exoskeleton, quantum computing, 4D printing versus 3D printing, because there is a trend now for having 4D printing, and a new trend is automated machine learning. So this should be taken into account based on the level of adoption and level of maturity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Stan. I agree with you that basically we are heavily now relying on AI, on different services that AI is providing. Some of them is also hyper automation. This is basically the topic that will come up later. But I'd like, for instance, ask Miguel Ángel, what do you think about from the perspective of really where do we stand today? When speaking about hyper-automation, digital twins, and blockchain, is this a reality, or this is just a few buzzwords that are still in the process of just exploring?
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for letting me be here with you. I'm really glad to share these discussions and these topics with all of you. For me, it's really interesting, and I'm really glad about it. Apart of that, well, I completely agree with Dan and with you. These are maybe the most edge technologies where companies are taking part. But concretely, with our clients, we are working in two specific concepts. The first one is the continuous intelligence, and the second one is the hyper automation, as you told before, Bojan. And in this second one, this is a little different, in the concept that the one that we usually talk about when we talk about AI. Because the traditional AI is based on a model that is a logic-centric approach, and we are working in the implementation of multi-agent systems. That is a kind of hyper-automation approach that we are indeed using in our actual clients. is for us is not a bust at all, because these clients are really conscious about the benefits that these technologies can involve for them, and they are investing really hard in this kind of technologies.
Okay, thank you. The same question for Anand. Anand, I know that you and your company are working a lot with artificial intelligence. You have one of probably the most accurate and the most stable solution for utilizing artificial intelligence for detecting anomalies in sound, and you have solutions also for industrial IoT. From your point of view, what do you think? Are we still in a process of adopting these technologies for Industry 4.0, or we can say really that clients realized the necessity and that basically they started heavily adopting the technologies, and they started changing the whole process and the culture in their companies, how to respond to all these challenges that they're experiencing through the whole value chain?
Yeah, thank you, Bojan. Again, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here, and thank you to the organizers. And also, our company does a lot of work with entity data, so thank you to entity data for all the collaboration. Now, I agree with what was just said. In addition, maybe I would add a couple of challenges that I see. So yes, number one, there are a lot of adoptions. Every company that we talk to, they are interested in utilizing AI. All the companies do have a vision that they want to use AI and they want to transform their business. So we do not have to convince them on the utility of AI. They are already convinced. I see that the customers already understand the value it brings. Where the challenges come is that the end-to-end transformation is still harder. When we deploy AI solutions in manufacturing or Industry 4.0, we solve one part of the problem, but there are so many other parts which are not solved by the same AI. And that I see as one of the problems. And customers often do not see, or we are not there yet where we see end-to-end benefit. So we need to make more progress. We are at a stage where I see many case studies of Industry 4.0 or AI implementations manufacturing, and I do see that they solve one piece of the problem, but there is more work to be done before they solve the entire end-to-end problem. So that's where I think we as a community have more work to do. Second point I would mention is, in addition to the areas just talked by Professor Stan, asset tracking is one area where I see a lot of traction. So a huge manufacturing industry is about lots of assets and expensive assets. So another area where there is a lot of adoption of the technologies is asset tracking and the logistics, movements of vehicles, real-time delivery or tracking of stuff. So there is a huge area there. So yes, to summarize, there is a good amount of adoption of the AI technologies, but at the same time, I think there is more work to be done before we can deliver end-to-end value to the customer.
Okay, thank you. So for Professor Stan, I know that you have to leave in 10 minutes, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately. I would like to add something to what Mr. Deshpande said. Very, very nice words he said. Something related from the barriers or for the challenges, because in my opinion, for most manufacturers or companies, they see Industry 4.0 as a big inhibitor because implementation is perceived like a low return of investment. Also from university point of view, the university curricula or the subjects right now does not satisfy the requirements imposed by Industry 4.0. And also manufacturers and companies needs to invest in personal development that can be done with the help of universities and universities to update their curricula. And the topics that were presented, from my opinion, are, we can stay and speak days only for a bullet. But the startups company, in my opinion, have the ideas, but they don't have the means. And the corporates, the resources, the corporate funding would have the ideas, would have the money, but they need to collaborate and to cooperate with the startup small companies. And in a way, this is what we are trying to do. More and more, we have at university collaborations with companies, and there are some specific dedicated programs to encourage the young students already from the first or second year to create a so-called startups or spin-off inside university. And an important role it has also the digital innovation hubs that are created all over Europe. And I know that also in Cluj there is, also in Serbia we have partners. And I think this could be a very good way. Also, I would like to mention something about an interesting topic that right now is the blockchain, the security. As you know, blockchain with crypto, with Bitcoin, and so on. And right now we assist to, let's say, a revolution, because the blockchain could offer, besides the very trendy concept and very attractive, it can solve many issues like security. It's very secure, based on the SH255 technology, which is quite hard. It could be, you need a lot of resources, hardware resources to break or to hack. So that's why, in a way, we can say that adoption, or it should be adopted to many manufacturing companies, to the companies that want to apply robots in their manufacturing system. And it can be a way to assure the security. Thank you from my side. I would politely would like to, I will stay for 5 minutes, but I politely would like to thank you and to leave the meeting afterwards. Thank you from my side.
Thank you very much. Thank you for these comments. One interesting thing you mentioned, that university curricula still doesn't support enough the challenges and the requests coming from the market. I think that this is, I can say, probably similar everywhere nowadays, because still I believe that universities are waiting for industry to start driving the direction where they want to invest. What is interesting for Serbia, and I can mention that during the last 2 years, we worked here all together, and we adopted the National AI Center and the National AI Strategy on the level of the whole country. And basically some of the topics that will be also tackled there is definitely Industry 4.0 and all those challenges and technologies that are coming with it. Also automation, full automation from the perspective of ERP CRM system, but also one of the subjects related to automotive sector. So hopefully, at least in Serbia, because we are still going through the process of full digitalization, there are industries, but you know, sometimes there are difficulties to explain to people that are driving the industry what is really the AI. So AI is not Jarvis or Terminator that we've seen in Hollywood movies. So AI is still something more straightforward. It's something that really needs to help how to automate the data and how to find patterns in the data that you have. So this is the process that we are experiencing everywhere. Some clients, companies that are longer present on the market, that already have some contacts with the technology, they understand the potential. And what you also mentioned, they understand also the necessity of protecting the data. Blockchain, different encryption techniques. Basically, we in entity data work a lot with very novel techniques like homomorphic or attribute-based encryption. What we do a lot is also exploring novel technologies like quantum computing and using quantum computers, or basically the process of dealing with photons for random number generating, because this is probably the basis of all encryption techniques. And the protection, the whole protection of the data, regardless if that data is in terms of privacy, is personal data, or is data coming from the production itself, zero trust architecture, which has been adopted, I think, 2020. So just 1 year before, the concept of utilizing zero trust for not only for banking, financial sectors, and sectors where this private data is very sensitive, but also for the production. So people are using now shared services. Some companies are not using only on-premise devices, they're using also cloud services, and they want to protect their data. They want that no one else has the access to data. And in that case, zero trust architecture and basically protection of data lakes and data warehouses are one of the biggest tasks of some large companies like Snowflake and similar. So they're dealing a lot with it. Also Red Hat, they're providing very good protection and very good cybersecurity around the data, because it's very important to have data, to protect data, and not to allow someone to just enter some, how to call it, malfunctioning parts inside of the whole data, which will definitely affect the value chain. And according to that, I would also like to ask Anand, what do you think about this concept of data protection and in general concept of digital twins? Can we make at this phase now, before we get quantum computers and before we get more powerful devices and more powerful algorithms, can we say that at least for some parts, we achieve a very high level of digital twins?
Yeah, thanks, Bojan. So let me first talk about data security. So yes, that is very important, and every manufacturing customer we talk about, they ask us about the data security, and they want their data to be private, and then they want data to be secure. So I think there is a good adoption already about various data security protocols, data security system. You mentioned a few things, some of the large companies which are providing data security. I would like to add that I see several new startups coming even in the hardware security. So in IoT, there is a lot of room for secure chips or small hardware chips that you could embed in various sensors or various data processing devices where you provide continuous security. So yes, so data security is a big area, and good to see that there is a lot of development both on the software, the algorithms like homomorphic transformations, and also the security in the chips, the hardware chips. There is a lot of area. Now coming to the second, coming to the other point you mentioned about digital twin. I think it's a great area, but I can maybe talk from the perspective where I have more experience in India. I think we are still not there yet. We are still behind in the digital twins. I think in Europe, probably the digital twin is far ahead. I have worked with some companies in Germany, and there they have taken it to a large level. There is so digital twin has become a part of their day-to-day workflow in the Europe, where many companies, every process they try on the digital twin first, or they do simulations and then they go to the manufacturing. So I see there is a sort of a divide. I would call it the tier 1 manufacturing companies in the world. The best of the manufacturing companies, like the big automotive companies from the Europe, they have taken it to a large level. There is a so digital twin has become a part of their day-to-day workflow in the Europe, where many companies, every process they try on the digital twin first, or they do simulations and then they go to the manufacturing. So I see there is a sort of a divide. I would call it the tier 1 manufacturing companies in the world. The best of the manufacturing companies like the big automotive companies from the Europe, they have adopted digital twins quite well, and they have made a lot of investment, and they have some tools. But if you see, maybe they are the top 20%, the tier. If you look at the rest of the 80%, maybe many companies in India or maybe the other parts, the developing world, I think the digital twin is still quite an advanced concept, and we still are not there yet. So I do see that difference, and a lot of work is happening. So a big part of the digital twin is the cost, and as the costs of developing digital twin is coming down, I would think that more and more adoption will happen from India. So markets like India are primarily cost driven, or they're very cost sensitive. They will adopt all the technology like digital twin when the cost comes down. So that is my view. Again, I am sitting in India, so my view may be slightly different than what is really happening in Europe, but that's sort of what I see.
Yeah, very interesting thoughts, and I fully agree with you. Basically, some researchers that basically try to understand the market, and some analysts, they identified companies which successfully implemented the Industry 4.0 technologies and also this digital twinning, but still many senior executives remain less prepared than they actually think they are. And this is one of the problems because, as you said, but that is the fact, basically, that most of the industries and most of the companies are driven, are cash driven. So at the end, they have their KPIs that they need to satisfy. And there are a lot of issues there because they do not invest enough in adopting new technologies, in researching new technologies. And this is basically where they need help from the university. Question for Miguel Ángel, also from the perspective of hyperautomation. So this is the concept that you already have a real experience with the clients. How about response from academia? Do they help you? Do they try to find new services, new roles in general from the organizational cultural change? What is needed for having a much higher rate of adopting the process of hyperautomation? Because this is definitely something which also, according to some analysts like Gartner, should support the business and increase the revenues by, I think they mentioned 25 or even 30%. So what's your feeling about it?
Yeah, that's it. As you have told, Gartner thinks about hyperautomation as one of the main trends, technological trends for the next years. And it is really important for all the factors, all the issues that our partners have told before. It's important to make a big investment, an important investment in the adoption of this knowledge and the introduction of this knowledge in an effective way in the university, of course, to have people with the knowledge that we need for these technologies, of course. And a part of that, there are several barriers that we need to break in the company's world. The first one is mostly cultural. Well, this is our perception in the way we work with these companies, because these kind of technologies, well, as I have told before, we develop multi-agent systems that are introduced in the companies, but they suppose a really big change. It's a very disruptive change in the company because it has a big impact in the organization and the processes of the company. Let me make a little introduction about this concept, because I know that they are not the usual concepts, the usual terms that we manage when we talk about new trends in technology. In this case, these kind of multi-agent systems are based on holonic systems in some way, in the way that you can think about a company as a whole system that is made of different small systems that in turn are made of different small systems. I mean, for example, a company is made of different areas. These areas are made of different departments, and all they work together to achieve a global goal for the company. So you can think about the multi-agent system in this way. A multi-agent system is that one in where you have several kinds of agents that have some specific task and goal to achieve, and they are autonomous, and they can work in a standalone way or work together to achieve a superior goal. I guess that you can have the idea about this thinking. So it is really complicated to change a mindset of one intelligence that organizes and orchestrates everything. That this is the traditional approach, to another one that is completely different, where you have to break down the complete goal in many different objectives or goals, and try to design a system that in combination with the other systems can help you to achieve the global goal. Is a complete change in the mindset of a company in many senses. And not only according the difference in the processes and the way a company organizes, but in the way that the people understands the way you integrate these digital collars into the company. We use this term, the term of digital collar, as an evolution of the traditional roles in a company based on industry. You know, we usually talk about blue collars and white collars in the terms of people that have a task more basic and more simple, like the blue collar people in a company, or the ones that have a very high level and tasks that are related to the white collar people. You know, this task usually involves decisions that implies a high risk. If you fail in this kind of decisions, you can it can be a loss, a big loss in money for the company. So we introduce a new kind of collar, and this is the digital one. This is a completely different way of working with AI or any other new technology in a company, because we need to work this, the people in the company need to work as equal with a digital element that can make decisions and that can make this relationship completely different than the one that a company has before.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And based on that, do you see here that companies need to evolve by themselves, or maybe to get in some partnership with other companies, or maybe they need to leverage the technologies produced by startups, because one of good examples here is RPAs, for instance. UiPath started as a startup, and now it's one of probably the leaders in that field. So what do you think, how in general, taking into consideration that adoption and building of such technologies definitely require infrastructural costs, costs for training the people, basically everything which needs to be a kind of investment. And what do you think, how we can basically, how we need as a companies position ourselves towards the market? So should we basically say that we are now let's say innovators, and we are going to do it by ourselves, or maybe with some large companies, or we are also oriented towards understanding the technologies that exist from startups?
Yeah, for sure. As Dan said before, it is impossible for a company to afford this change, this digital change by themselves, because it is complicated to, well, first of all, many companies that doesn't have an IT department at all. So of course, for those companies, it is mandatory. But apart of that, although a company have this kind of IT department, it is almost impossible that they have the knowledge at this moment to afford this kind of change, or to introduce this kind of technologies, because indeed it is difficult or for a traditional IT company. I mean, these IT companies like ours has started with these technologies few years ago. We are not, these technologies are so new that is almost impossible to have specialized people with this kind of knowledge, you know. So as Dan said before, it's useful to find this kind of knowledge in little startups that are made up precisely from this knowledge, you know. It's people that has finished some kind of studies very specific in this kind of technologies, and they are the ones that they are the founders of these small companies. But the clients looking for this kind of companies that help them to introduce these technologies have conflicting feelings, you know, because for one side, of course, they are the best prepared for these tasks, of course. But in the other hand, they are usually small companies that are really young, and for traditional companies are not trusty at all, you know, because you cannot put your trust in a company that is made just 1 year ago and is made of 5-10 people that you don't know, you don't have real success stories behind them. So it is complicated for these companies. The good thing, the good point about that is that we as IT companies, consultancy companies, we have already the experience for helping them to introduce this kind of technologies.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Yes, you are right. So for small companies, it's very hard to find a place on market before they have a success story behind themselves, because everyone wants to see first the results to be able to make a decision if they're continuing a joint operations with that company or not. From the perspective of bigger companies, when they're trying to basically find their paths through the market, Anand, how costly for you is to deliver from idea to product, and then to find actually to have in advance maybe clients or companies that will adopt your technology very soon. And in general, how is also difficult for you when you start dealing with new technologies to basically compete with startups and some small companies that maybe have some other resources or funds that are, let's say, not available for you?
Yeah, thanks, Bojan. That's a very good question, because that is the key challenge that all the startups face. I would say there are two sides to that story. You described some of the difficulties in converting the idea and converting that to the product and convincing the customers. I would say there is also a sort of a positive side. So I have been, I founded a startup, and I have had startup journey. So I would say there are two things. Sometimes just because we are a startup, it is easier for us to attract customers' attention to new ideas. When before this, I used to work at large companies and several multinational corporations. When multinational corporations go to a manufacturing customers, sometimes they think that, oh, these guys are going to talk about a lot of fancy ideas, and then they are not very serious. So manufacturing customers do not really like talking about big ideas right out of the box. But when I go as a startup and then say, oh, I have a startup and I have this specific idea, they like it more because a small startup team talks about a very specific idea and not about a grand vision. So there is an advantage that sometimes we get, it's easier to get attention from the customers. That's one part. A second, though, so it's easy for me to get the conversation started and get the customer attention. But after that, it's all the difficulty, as you correctly said, Bojan. So after I present them the idea and they like the idea, it is still not easy to convince them to adopt that technology, because then invariably every customer wants previous success stories. And that is the chicken and egg problem, right? That's a challenge, that I cannot have success story before I have customers, and then customers don't like me before I have success story. So it's a hard thing. And that is where I think the collaboration between startup and large companies is very, very good thing. And there we are very thankful to companies like Entity Data, with whom we are working. Because then if I partner with Entity Data and convince the Entity Data team or show them how my technology works, and then they show it to their customers, there is a lot more credibility. So all our success stories have come from companies like Entity Data, companies like Intel. We have very strong collaboration with Intel in India, companies like Cisco. So these are the large companies that give us the credibility which we directly like. So we bring in the technology, we do the ground level innovation, then we partner with the large company, they put in their credibility and their experience, and together we pitch it to the customer. So I really think that is the only way, till a point where the startup really is so big, then they can pitch on their own, but all the initial struggles can be solved by a partnership between a corporate and a startup.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was really a great answer. As you know, also in Entity Data, we are organizing a yearly event. It's a kind of competition for the startups. And basically the startups that show the best ideas and the best potential, they exactly go through this program of having a joint collaboration with us for attracting new clients, and basically for helping them to bring their own ecosystem on the market and start building themselves as a company. So transition from being just a startup to becoming a real company. And this is really a tough task for small companies, because what you also mentioned, there is a certain paradox on the market. So we have on one side companies like what has been mentioned here, large European OEMs that are really, if you go to their factories, you can see top hot topics implemented already. They have a lot of budgets, and basically they are also forced by some processes adopted, particularly for automotive industry, to rely on a higher level of automation that can be also measurable and that can support the whole process and be measured at the end. Yes, the production, the value chain production was okay in this percentage, or it had some failures. But also on the other side, talking with some also large companies in the world can bring you to a situation that, as you said, they don't want to adopt new technologies until they are 100% sure that that technology has the potential in the market, that it's not only disruptor, but it is something that already starts generating a large amount of revenues. And if that is the case, then they will start adopting that technology, but still step by step. So those companies, they just want to play safely, how I can say. So they are not ready maybe to jump into new technologies very fast, because it's not the question if they trust for this technology, but they, from the cultural perspective of the company, they are more focused towards adopting those technologies that has or that have been market proven.
Yes.
Okay, so speaking about the whole transition, we cannot forget the last year and a half that we experienced this COVID pandemic. And this was maybe a very good situation, because it showed us that some processes that previously taken months or even a year, now supposed to be solved in a month. Infrastructure supposed to work without much outages, to be stable. Also, people that previously worked in the process of production, they showed a little bit negative response to adopting the higher level of automation, of course, because they're afraid of their job. What do you think from the perspective of industry? Did we respond to COVID properly? Can we say that industrial automation or overall automation that was applied to the whole process of production nowadays is something which can solve issues like lockdowns during pandemics and basically forcing that everything goes automated? Or there were some issues that are still under a radar for solving, and at least we experienced that we should start using more of these technologies to support everyday jobs in Industry 4.0. So Anand, first the question for you.
Sure. So yes, I definitely see that there is a lot of additional demand for using the technology, and I think it's there is definitely a lot of demand. So for new technology adoption, this is a great time. The unfortunate COVID situation has actually increased the industry's appetite for using new technology. 2 years back, a lot of industry, they had their traditional processes and they were set, and they did not think that they would need to change anything because they thought they have everything right. This unfortunate COVID sort of gave a wake-up call to everybody that you cannot continue the old-fashioned way and you have to invent new things. So now it is given that every company is trying to invent new ways. So that is definitely a good thing. In India, for example, a lot of processes are totally now automated just in last 1 year. I see huge change just in a year back, that some companies were doing some processes with a lot of old manual methods. And now just in 1 year, I see that a lot of those processes are completely automated. I see a lot of new online businesses coming up, which were not there. A lot of processes which were done in an offline way. Suddenly now people do everything in online. So manufacturing industry has changed a lot in India in last 1 year. And there is a very good business opportunity for all the innovations. Anybody wants to sell the innovation, this is a good time. Having said that, there are also challenges. So again, it's a, sort of a paradox. Many companies now want to adopt the new technology, but the ground level difficulties are still there, and those challenges may take some time to solve. So for example, it is still not easy for visitors to go and visit the company. So when they want to install, let's say, a new sensor or a new technology, unfortunately in manufacturing world, the sensor kind of technology or the new piece of automation equipment does require some kind of ground level activity. You can maybe remotely have meetings and do the presentation, but you cannot remotely install a new robo, for example, right? And anytime you need to have vendors visiting, installing things, doing trials, doing data collection, those activities are still sort of getting delayed and there are challenges, but I assume those are temporary challenges. So I would say that after the temporary challenges of the lockdowns and restrictions on the visits, they are gone. Overall, we are looking at a much more positive situation where we would see that the manufacturing industry wants to use a lot of automation and there is a lot more demand for automation. So I think next 1 or 2 years could be very positive for the Industry 4.0 adoption increases.
Thank you. Thank you. Miguel Ángel, what is your experience with COVID pandemic in Spain? It was really tough, and I believe that also you and your team and basically Everis had a lot of tasks to do the automation and to protect people from not coming into direct contact between each other. So what's your general experience with the adoption of automation in Spain or in Latin America?
Well, apart of the general problems that you have commented, for us in the past, taking consideration that the most important project that we are working on with a Latin American client started like 2 years and a half, more or less, ago. So we have done all in a remote fashion, So in this way, we haven't experienced any kind of problem. The real problem was more in their part, of course, the typical logistics problems or those related to those kind of tasks that you cannot do in a remote fashion, But for us, it haven't been a problem at all because of that, because all our work has been in a remote way. So in this sense, for this client and for other clients, it has been almost the same. So in my personal experience, it hasn't been a problem at all. But if I can tell to you that, of course, for our clients, there have been several problems related to that has been solved in part with process automation or the establishment of digital channels or with the business monitoring systems that are automated too. So a part of that, you see, in our part, in my personal part, there hasn't any problem at all.
Thank you. And since we are lacking of time, the last question that I would like to ask everyone, basically we are speaking indefinitely. We are moving towards the full digitalization, but from your perspective and from your discussions with your clients, we must take into consideration also the human element. How people, how those operators that were previously involved in the process of production, how they feel now, knowing that most of their tasks will be automated. Are they ready to learn and to just reorganize themselves and change the role? So to basically be supportive now, or they are more negative and they don't like machines, they don't like robots, they are looking like it's the end of the world when robots come to the production line. So what is your experience with that?
So, well, of course, it depends of the part of the company you are asking. too. Of course, for the higher statements of the companies, it is a good opportunity to improve in many aspects. But of course, for those people in the company that see this kind of new technologies as the enemy, is that, as I told you before, maybe they can see these digital collars like the ones that are their competition, their direct competition inside the company. It of course is a problem because they are not very collaborative, of course, with this kind of projects. But I think that it's a general challenge that the humanity need to afford. I am really pretty sure that this is going to be like where the Industrial Revolution, in many aspects, or many other revolutions that we have in the humanity. So it is important to make one change in our mindset about that. And we all need to realize that this cannot be made directly, because there are many issues to resolve before that in the companies and in the way they are organized and in general, because of this.
Yeah, thank you. And Anand, what's your opinion about this?
So I agree with that exactly. This is a challenge, and I think the onus is on us in a way to help the industry or the people to change their mindset. So when we talk to them, we have to tell them the right side or the right perspective. For example, I think in industry, it is not going to be overnight that a lot of people will lose jobs, or it will not be overnight suddenly things are taken over by AI. It's a gradual change. And what we talk to some of the customers is that we explain to them the benefits of AI and tell them what else they could do by using that AI. And that way the worker who is doing certain job can upscale or up his or her skills to a new role where they are using that AI as a tool and not looking at that as the AI will replace their job, but they can use their creativity or their knowledge to say, I can use this tool and add value in another way. A lot of the AI solutions we develop are at a level where they would still require some human intervention sometime, or if they are used together with human plus AI is still a lot more powerful than AI alone. So many customers, we say that do not look at it as an AI alone, and then maybe your expectations are wrong, but look at it as the AI used by your manpower today, your human workforce, and then together you can achieve a lot more. And that is really, people like that. So it's onus is on me to convince them of that vision, and then a lot more customers will be supportive. But if I go and start telling them that I can replace all your manual work by automation, then there is a lot of resistance, and I think maybe rightfully so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I agree fully with you. So as both of you said, if we are following the trends in history and how the industry evolved from pre-industry era till industry 1.0, etc., it was a really definite impact from all industrial revolutions to jobs, to roles, basically to the whole market. But still, we are all working, so there should not be a problem, because people need to understand that the technology is there to easy the work for them, not to take the job from them. Yes. And the whole system, including the educational system, will need to adapt as soon as possible, really to change the mindset of people, because what we want to achieve is more reliable, more secure, much better products on the market, but still to try to decrease the level of intervention from humans to the lower part, where still people will have some kind of roles in this process, but those roles will be different. So they will require less physical work, but more mental work. And definitely the whole process of evolution, not only the industry, but of humans, is something that we are going to experience in the next years. So I think we already are 6 minutes late, but this discussion was really, really helpful and very interesting. So I believe that participants enjoyed here. Ivan, Milan, do you have any question, or is there any question from the audience before we close this session?
Are there any questions from the audience? If not, then we can close this session. Thank you all for attending, and I invite you to stay here in the main room. The next panel starts in just a few minutes, 11:10 Central European Time. The topic is success stories from consumer technology about helping and saving lives. Stay tuned.